I had barely finished my morning coffee when my clerk, Christina, walked in, her eyes wide and cautious. "Judge," she said, lowering her voice, "there's someone in the holding cell." "A nun." I paused. A nun? On my docket? My years on the bench had taught me one thing: never assume what you see is what it seems. "She's charged with?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "Grand larceny. Assault. Disorderly conduct," she replied. The smile I'd felt moments ago vanished. Suddenly, the courtroom, which had seemed ordinary, felt charged, almost electric. By the time I took my seat on the bench, the doors had swung open. And there she was. Full habit. Black and white. Rosary in one hand, Bible in the other. Head bowed in prayer. She moved slowly, deliberately, like every step was a statement. To the average observer, she looked holy, someone you could trust with your life. But the moment she raised her head, that illusion shattered. "I am a bride of Christ," she hissed, her voice slicing through the room. "I answer only to God." The courtroom froze. Whispers bounced off the walls. Half the people looked stunned. The other half leaned forward, eager to see how this would unfold. And in that frozen moment, I turned to you, my viewers. If you were sitting here right now, watching this unfold, what would your first reaction be? Comment below, I want to know. She wasn't here just to pray. She was here to challenge every rule, every authority, and every expectation. And I could already tell this wasn't going to be a simple case of shoplifting. Something much bigger was hiding beneath that habit. The formalities began. The charges were read: $2,000 worth of designer perfume, silk scarves, and jewelry. Assault on a mall security guard. Disruptive conduct in public spaces. On paper, it seemed straightforward. But nothing about her behavior was ordinary. She knelt at the defense table, making the sign of the cross with precision, then raised her head and glared at me. Her eyes were sharp, calculated, and fearless. She claimed her actions were for charity, gifts for orphans, a mission to help the less fortunate. I studied her closely. The calmness in her demeanor clashed violently with the chaos she had caused. It was almost mesmerizing, like watching a magician perform a trick while hinting at the secret behind it. Small mysteries started creeping in. Who taught her this act? How did she know the language of the church so well? Why was she so confident, so rehearsed? Each answered question seemed only to open another. The gallery watched, silent but tense, as she repeated her claims. Her words seemed plausible, almost convincing. And yet, the evidence told a different story. Security footage. Stolen items. The guard's injuries. And that's the tension I wanted everyone in the room, and you at home, to feel. Holy act versus hard evidence, faith versus fraud. Now I turn it over to you again. Do you think her claims for charity are real, or is this all a performance? Comment your thoughts. Even as she pleaded for belief, I knew we were heading into uncharted territory. This case was going to test not just the law, but every instinct I had honed in decades on the bench. And then I noticed it. As she shifted, the hem of her habit lifted just enough to reveal bright red 6-inch heels. Completely inappropriate for a nun. Not practical. Not modest. Not charitable. But striking, flashy, and deliberate. That tiny detail shattered the final piece of illusion. This wasn't just a performance for the court, it was a show meant to awe, intimidate, and distract. Her theatrics escalated. She spoke in gibberish that mimicked Latin. She threw accusations at anyone who questioned her. She demanded immunity, claiming ecclesiastical law and the authority of the Vatican. Her voice was loud, commanding, almost hypnotic. And all the while, small mysteries stacked themselves like cards on a table. Why did she know the Latin phrases so well? Why the meticulous timing? How could someone plan such a display without prior experience in the church? I turn to you, my viewers, once more. What would you do if someone committed crimes while dressed as a nun, claiming holiness as a shield? Would you intervene, or would you wait to see the truth revealed? The courtroom held its breath. Her threats rang in the air, as if she believed she was untouchable. But I could see the cracks beginning to form, tiny inconsistencies in her act that hinted at the truth. The courtroom had grown heavy with tension. Every eye was on her, but I could feel a different weight settling on my shoulders, the responsibility to see past theatrics and get to the truth. I leaned back slightly, adjusting my glasses, and reminded myself of what decades on the bench had taught me: chaos is often the curtain behind which reality hides. People like this, loud, defiant, and seemingly untouchable, are counting on that. She raised her voice, accusing me of judging her soul instead of her actions. She claimed ecclesiastical law gave her immunity, threatened to call the Vatican, and insisted that I had no authority over her. The gallery shivered, some leaning forward with awe, others with disbelief. I watched her, not as a performer, but as a human being trapped by her own deception. I thought about my father, who taught me to respect the church and those who serve, but also to recognize a con when it walks through the door in a costume. And then it happened. She began chanting. It sounded like Latin, but it wasn't. Nonsense syllables strung together, yet delivered with conviction, as if she were casting some invisible spell over the courtroom. The audience murmured. Some eyes widened in fear, some lips twitched in stifled laughter. I could see the small doubts forming in the minds of the gallery, the lawyers, even the security officers. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't a simple case. She was testing everyone. She wanted them to hesitate. The chant continued, rising in volume, and I leaned forward. What exactly was she planning next? What had she prepared that we couldn't yet see? The answers were coming, but not yet. And that was exactly what made this case so dangerous, and fascinating. I had been watching her carefully all morning, noting her every gesture, every pause. And that's when it hit me, this was no spontaneous act of madness. She had planned every word, every outburst, every accusation. The red heels. The stolen items hidden in her habit. The fake Latin chants. None of it was random. I asked myself quietly, as the courtroom held its collective breath, who taught her this? How long has she been perfecting this act? My clerk, Christina, had been quietly gathering information. Phone calls, local inquiries, little pieces of a puzzle that hinted at her past. There were whispers of previous incidents in nearby towns. Minor thefts disguised under charity claims. Imposters pretending to be church affiliates. Each tip strengthened my suspicion, this wasn't simply a shoplifting case. This was a carefully rehearsed con, meant to manipulate, intimidate, and escape accountability. Even in that chaos, I had to remain calm. I reminded myself that the law and the truth are shields stronger than any costume or performance. And yet, I had a nagging feeling, something bigger was coming. Something hidden beneath this act, something that would shake the courtroom's understanding of who this woman really was. It started with a whisper from Christina. "Judge, I think the Sisters of Providence can confirm whether she's really one of theirs," she said, her eyes darting to the defendant. I nodded. The investigation was quiet, behind the scenes, but moving fast. Christina's phone calls were precise. Names verified. Convents contacted. A simple question: do you recognize her? The gallery remained unaware. The fake nun continued her performance, raising her voice, claiming divine authority, invoking laws that didn't exist. Yet beneath the bravado, tiny cracks were appearing in her story. I leaned on my desk and addressed you, my viewers. Do you think anyone can truly hide behind lies forever? Comment below. I want to know what you would do if someone wore a mask for decades. And then, a hush fell over the courtroom. The double doors at the back slowly opened. I could see movement, deliberate and purposeful. The figure walking in was not flamboyant, not theatrical. She didn't need to raise her voice to command attention. The gallery's attention shifted. The fake nun froze mid-gesture. And just like that, the presence of one person had begun to change everything. Sister Margaret was entering, and I knew in that moment that the first layer of lies was about to be stripped away. The double doors creaked open, and in walked an elderly woman, slow, steady, and entirely unassuming. Her habit was plain, worn wool and cotton. No jewelry. No makeup. Sensible black shoes. Her cane tapped softly on the courtroom floor, but it wasn't the sound that captured attention, it was the presence she carried. A presence that demanded respect without raising her voice. "Peace be with you," she said softly, standing beside the defendant. The fake nun's confident facade faltered for the first time. Her red heels, her sharp voice, her wild accusations, none of it prepared her for the quiet authority of Sister Margaret. "I am Sister Margaret," the elderly nun continued. "I have been with the Sisters of Providence for 60 years. I know every sister in this state. And I do not know you." The courtroom gasped. The fake nun's face turned pale beneath layers of heavy makeup. Sister Margaret reached out, touching the fabric of the defendant's habit. "This," she said softly, rubbing the material, "is polyester. Our habits are wool and cotton. This is a costume." The audience erupted. Laughter, gasps, murmurs of disbelief, chaos returned, but this time, the defendant was powerless. The layers of lies she had built so carefully were stripped away in a single moment. Then it happened, the robe tore as officers moved in to remove her. Underneath, jeans and a rhinestone t-shirt revealed the shocking truth: she wasn't a nun. She wasn't holy. She was just a thief in disguise, a fraud who had thought she could manipulate the law with faith as a shield. The courtroom's attention shifted, awe and relief mixing in the air. The fake nun screamed, but no one cared anymore. The truth had been revealed, and it was irreversible. Yet even as she was led away, I knew, this was only the beginning of the lesson she needed to learn. The gallery was quiet now, waiting. The tension had lifted, but the weight of justice still lingered. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "Madam," I said firmly, "you have been found guilty of grand larceny, assault, and fraud." She shook her head violently. "I am holy. I am chosen. You cannot judge me." "I am not judging your holiness," I replied calmly. "I am judging your actions. You thought a costume could protect you. It cannot. Character is what remains when the disguise comes off. The sentence had to be more than punishment, it had to be a lesson. 1 year in the county jail was imposed, but that was only the beginning. You will also perform 500 hours of community service, I continued. At the local soup kitchen run by Sister Margaret. No costume. No heels. No makeup. Just work, and humility, and service to others. The courtroom murmured. Some nodded in approval. Others looked shocked at the symbolic justice. I turn to you, viewers. Would you have punished her the same way? Why or why not? Comment below. I want to know how you would balance law and morality. The defendant shrieked and resisted, but the officers moved calmly. The lesson was not just punishment, it was transformation through responsibility. Once she was gone, the courtroom slowly exhaled. Relief mingled with awe. Mr. Henderson, the security guard, shook his head but managed a small smile. Sister Margaret looked around, nodding softly. It was a moment of truth, of justice, and of clarity. The audience had witnessed deception, bravado, and carefully staged lies crumble under real experience and integrity. And I thought again about you, my viewers. Have you ever encountered someone pretending to be what they're not? Someone hiding behind masks of virtue, charm, or authority? Comment your story below. Even as order returned, I could not shake the sense that imposters like this exist everywhere, waiting for the right moment to test honesty, trust, and judgment. That thought lingered in the air, as chilling as it was instructive. Sitting in my chambers later, I reflected on what had happened. Anyone can put on a robe. Anyone can memorize a few lines, speak with authority, and fool the world for a moment. But character is revealed when the costume comes off. This story is not just about theft or fraud. It's about human nature, deception, and the courage required to confront it. The fake nun thought she could manipulate faith, law, and public perception. She was wrong. And in her defeat, a lesson was clear for everyone watching. If you've stayed with me this far, I have one final question. Do you believe you could spot a fraud in your own life before it was too late? Comment below where you're watching from and share your thoughts. And if you want more stories that reveal the hidden truths behind human behavior, crime, and deception, subscribe now. This is where the real stories live, and you won't want to miss the next one. Because in the end, you never know who is hiding behind a mask, until the moment they're exposed.